Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our forum, today's forum. My name is Michael Dawes, and together with Tony down here, we sort of coordinate the Market Linkage Association on behalf of its members. I'm not going to say much. I've invited Rodney Mshonga-Chawari, a colleague, to facilitate the meeting. So I'm getting off very lightly today. Yeah.
Thanks, Mike. Like you introduced, my name is Rodney Mshonga-Chawari. I'll give a disclaimer. I was part of the team which did the USAID digital agriculture assessment with strategic impact advisors. So today we are going to have two presentations on digital agriculture. This is quite an important topic for us. I'm sure we are all caught by COVID unprepared, and we had to learn how to use Zoom, Microsoft Teams. We had to quickly adapt fast to deploy some of the tools, WhatsApp extensions. We saw other companies doing virtual field days. So we're going to have two presentations, one from USAID on the digital agriculture ecosystems assessment, which is going to be presented by Mr. Kenneth Matikiti. Then the second presentation is an example of an advisory service tool, which was developed by Veldunga Yofe and the Nigel Gambanga will share on their journey implementing the Kurima Mari advisory tool. So without taking much time, I'll invite Mr. Kenneth Matikiti to come present. I'll ask you to introduce yourself on what USAID has been doing in the space and who you are. Thank you, sir. You can. And it's editing the presentation. All right.
Thank you so much, Rodney. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kenneth Matikiti. I'm a project management specialist supporting agriculture and food security components with USAID Zimbabwe here in Harare. So basically, USAID Zimbabwe has been one of the many organizations that are trying to, promote digitalization of agriculture in this country. We have actually conducted various studies across the length and breadth of the African continent. And here in Zimbabwe, we did commission, or rather contracted, strategic impact advisors to undertake this digital agriculture assessment. Yeah. So it's my pleasure meeting you all. So without much ado, let me run down the presentation and then we have questions thereafter. So the purpose of the assignment, like I alluded to earlier on, is research. The assessment was actually conducted by strategic impact advisors. And the purpose of the assignment, number one, it was for them to undertake a mapping exercise of relevant stakeholders within the digital agricultural ecosystem of Zimbabwe, basically getting to know who does what in terms of promoting digital products and services in Zimbabwe. Then number two, understanding the use of digital tools for monitoring crops and livestock production, right? As you know, we are moving into the ICT era, or we are already in the ICT era. So in terms of monitoring of crops and livestock production, we really need to come up with robust and innovative methodologies of doing that monitoring work. So it was part of their scope of work. And then number three, identifying key challenges and opportunities to leverage digital tools and technologies for the agricultural sector, aligned with the priorities of USAID Zimbabwe. Just like any other study, we need to identify and surface out, the opportunities as well as the challenges, so that should inform and improve our programming going forward. And then finally, develop recommendations for USAID Zimbabwe on how to adopt emerging digital technologies in programming. So this was the purpose of the assessment undertaken by strategic impact advisors. Then in terms of methodology, the methodology was actually a combination of, desk research, as well as, holding or conducting key informant interviews. So on literature review, strategic impact advisors, they managed to conduct about 50 they managed to actually identify 50 desk research sources, which they actually utilized for this study. And they also managed to reach out to 61 key informant interviews or interviewees, right, through both remote conferencing as well as in-person meetings. So the pie chart that you see there actually disaggregates, the type of interviewees that were interviewed by strategic impact advisors. There we had financial institutions accounting for about 6.6%. We also had research institutions accounting for 3.3%. Our USAID implementing partners, they also were interviewed. We had agribusinesses and cooperatives accounting for 24.6%, government agencies and regulators accounting for 9.8%, technology providers with 23%, and then finally, development organizations and donor-funded programs, again accounting for about 23%. So these were the groups that were actually interviewed by strategic impact advisor. So digital taxonomy use cases. So in terms of undertaking the assessment, we had advisory services coming up with about 43 digital solutions to support agriculture. And then we had, it was actually followed up by ecosystem support with 28 solutions, and then market linkage and e-commerce with 24, and then finance with 17, and then supply chain management with the list. They came up with about 10 digital solutions. That was the taxonomy or the specialized fields that actually participated in the study. Okay, next. So in terms of high-level findings that I would like to share with you, well, this is more contextual at the highest level. Zimbabwe's mobile connectivity index, we are told it is actually slightly above that of sub-Saharan Africa, scoring about 42.4, above the sub-Saharan Africa's index score of 41.5%. So I think marginally, Zimbabwe is slightly higher than the rest of sub-Saharan Africa. And then of the 4 key enablers, because there was kind of a scoring system, we are told Zimbabwe scored highest in terms of consumer readiness with a score of about 61.8. And it scored again the lowest in terms of affordability at 26.8. Often, many a time when I move around, people always complain about data. The cost of data is too high. It's not affordable. So perhaps that is the reason why, in terms of affordability, Zimbabwe scored the least score of 26.8. And then in terms of internet and mobile phone penetration, according to Potras, they estimate that the internet penetration rate currently stands at about 65.3%, and there are about 14,300,790 active mobile connections as at December 2022. However, smartphone penetration is estimated at 52% by Econet. And the government of Zimbabwe is also trying to, kind of review upwards the target of penetration to reach about 75% coverage by 2025, right? We know at household level, especially in rural areas, most people, they do own ordinary mobile handsets, right? But we know smartphones are a bit expensive, such that most households cannot afford to purchase, smartphones. And maybe that speaks to the level of 52%. And I guess it has to do with affordability challenges on most rural households. And then 30% of mobile base stations are located in rural areas, with about 70% in urban areas. So in a way, when one compares the urban areas, we see there are lots of base stations that were installed by the mobile network operators, and then maybe about 30% established or installed in the rural areas. So in a way, in terms of infrastructure, it tends to favor the urban than the rural areas. And it creates that divide between the rural as well as the urban geographies. Next slide. Insights on mobile ownership. Mobile money accounts are the most popular kind of financial services, and Econet actually estimates, processing at 99.7%. of the total value of mobile money transactions, right? So be it a rural household or an urban household, it's actually proven that, there's a higher uptake and a higher usage of mobile money, right? And the usage is about 99.7%. And then when it comes to the national average of mobile money account ownership, it stands at 51%, with the rural areas accounting for about 47% of the total mobile money account ownership, right? And perhaps, the difference, about 53%, is for the urban. And then in terms of gender gap, mobile money account gender gap stands at 9.75%, right? So in that vein, I can also comment to say, for most rural and urban households, they are more comfortable using mobile money, as compared to actually opening up bank accounts, because the rigors of opening a bank account, is a bit prohibitive for most households, and hence mobile money comes in handy as a cheaper alternative. Then our study as well, it looked at both the demand side of, digital services, as well as the supply side of, more digital services. So looking at the supply side, one of the key findings was that advisory services are the most popular type of digital agriculture tools and services being developed by supply side actors. Here we are talking of the likes of players like DripTech, who are now using digital tools to support irrigation scheduling and water management. I'm sure whenever I undertake a field trip, I normally see most rural households, they are now adopting, drip irrigation as a more efficient way of irrigating their crops. And we also have the likes of Bain, New Holland, and Agricon equipment, who specialize in the supply of GPS-fitted equipment, also chipping in to support agriculture. Then the second finding was that farmer information services are being delivered over voice, such as IVR, text channels, SMS, and USSD, and increasingly mobile applications. So this is the way to go, right? We know in terms of disseminating information, most rural households and even smallholder farmers are now accessing agricultural information via bulk messaging, via SMS, right? So we are saying, in a way, it's actually going a long way towards revolutionizing our agriculture in this country, right? And then the EcoFarmer mobile farm platform was launched in 2030 by Econet Wireless, is one of the earliest digital agricultural products providing information and extension services to farmers. I hope maybe even Econet are in attendance to attest to this, yeah? And then we also have the likes of Novatech's Huku 263 chatbot application, providing farmers with important production information and input prices. So these are some of the innovative, technologies that are being introduced to promote digital services in agriculture. Technology providers, they've also developed innovations offering farmer information services, and those are some of the various examples that the study actually came up with. We've got Murimi 247's Microp Manager, providing daily actionable agronomic information that helps farmers to adopt climate-smart crop management practices and achieve above-average yields. We also have the Zimbabwe Mercantile Exchange, or ZMX, providing real-time market data on commodity prices, price trends, bids and offers, trading volumes and values. Although, I've interacted with the ZMX, but I'm still to be convinced that, their products and services actually reaching out in a great way to support our smallholder farmers. Yeah, they seem to be confined mainly in the urban areas, and I think a lot of marketing and promotion is actually needed by ZMX, so that even our smallholder farmers in the rural areas get to know about their product offerings and also uptake and utilize their digital products and services. And then we also have other applications that provide crop and livestock information, including WHH, World Against Hunger, Kurima Mari. We also have Syngenta's MySeeds Syngenta, and Seedco's mobile application with pest and disease management tips, right? It will also be good for us to interact with these service providers in relation to the products and services that they are offering, and also get to check and track the effectiveness of their products in terms of supporting smallholder agriculture. But I know for sure, Kurima Mari, yes, they've actually piloted their product under the ZAGP, which is an EU-funded project. They're actually supporting poultry farmers in terms of promoting poultry production as well as marketing using this Kurima Mari tool. Yeah, next. Coming on to market linkages and commerce. Right, the supply of market linkage and e-commerce services in Zimbabwe have expanded in response to COVID-19 restrictions. Well, COVID-19 was bad, we all agree. But I must also say that, every cloud has got a silver lining, right? So it came as somewhere a blessing in disguise for COVID-19, right? In terms of accelerating the usage of, digital products and services in Zimbabwe. People had no option. Travel was restricted, right? So the only way for people to disseminate information, even to the remotest locations in Zimbabwe, was through digital products and services. So in a way, COVID-19, yes, it was an opportunity to promote digital products and services. And then e-marketing and e-commerce services are among the more prevalent sub-use cases. So here we've got various examples of some organizations that have already started piloting their digital products and services. Farmate Africa is a business-to-business agtech platform that connects 400,000 farmers to about 270 restaurants, retailers, and vendors. So I must say, in a way, that is a key achievement, right? It's some kind of a new innovation that is being piloted by Farmate Africa. But my prayer and expectation is that let it be disseminated widely so that the uptake and utilization also increases. And then Econet, they also launched the online marketplace, which is one of the dominant marketplace platforms in Zimbabwe. Yeah. And then subscribing EcoCash farmers can also access an Eco-Farmer Club trading platform to sell their crops and livestock via a USSD channel. Great. Yeah. But I really want to see these kind of innovative products being utilized by our smallholder farmers, right? As long as they remain at an elitist level, probably earmarking used by the commercial farmers at the expense of the smallholder farmers, I'm not too much pleased, right? Let it, translate, let it cascade downwards, yeah, to the most vulnerable of societies, yeah. Then we can really talk of saying, yes, we're actually reaching a wider audience, a wider clientele that is now uptaking and utilizing these products and services. And then finally, ZMX links local and international buyers and sellers via a digital marketplace. Yeah. So we are saying, yes, it's good. Yeah. In a way, it's lessening the burden of agriculture in terms of accessing, receiving, and disseminating information, right? If ZMX is able to convince and involve local and international buyers to transact via digital marketplaces, for me, yes, it is a step in the right direction, but much more needs to be done. Yes. There is limited supply of mechanization access services in Zimbabwe. We do have the Eco Farmers via Tractor, which is one of the few platforms that allows farmers subscribed to Econet to hire, order, and pay for farming equipment via their mobile phones. Yeah, that's another innovation in terms of mechanizing agriculture. Next. Several companies offer services in agricultural supply chain management, including logistics solutions. Yeah, here again, the example of Farmate Africa, you can read for yourselves. There are limited traceability and certification solutions available in Zimbabwe. We have got this company, eLivestock Global Private Limited, which has got a traceability solution for livestock. Yeah, they are trying to take our livestock, cattle especially, yeah, for identification purposes. As you know, in the communal areas, we have got, this free ranging, yeah, kind of style where cattle actually mix and mingle in the fields. But for one to be able to identify which cattle belongs to them, they don't have any ear tags. It may prove to be a bit problematic. Hence, eLivestock Global LLC came up with this traceability solution for livestock to allow farmers to manage their herd remotely and have access to information about the animals, including birth dates. Yeah, it's interesting if we find our smallholder farmers actually keeping records of the birth dates for their livestock, dipping and vaccination services, right, and animal movement. These are some of the things which Agritech encourages our farmers to adopt, but sometimes the uptake is very, very low. But maybe with the introduction of digital products and services, yeah, it might actually go a long way towards ensuring that livestock traceability and identification is promoted. Yes. Coming on to free account opening, yeah, I think I alluded to earlier on to say most of our urban and even rural communities, they now prefer mobile money. Yeah, usage mobile money banking as opposed to actually opening a bank account. Why is that so? With the free account opening, that does not have monthly fees, services accessible via USSD, agent networks, and mobile applications. Mobile money wallets are preferred over bank accounts. Yeah, and that is the common cry of most smallholder farmers. If you actually engage them to say, why don't you open bank accounts? Do you have a bank account? No, I don't have. Why? It's very expensive for me to open a bank account. Whenever I approach a bank trying to open a bank account, they do have these numerous, restrictions or, compliance issues, which are beyond me. They want to know the physical addresses. Some even ask how much money do you have? What's the size of your asset holding? Do you have collateral? Blah, blah, blah. Charges will be levied on your account. So most of our smallholder farmers are not yet in a position to open bank accounts, especially if they don't perceive the potential benefit out of it. Yeah. But with mobile money, it's proving to be cheaper, a cheaper alternative for them. Yeah. They don't even need to travel long distances to come into the cities and towns to transact. They can actually do the transactions on their mobile phones. Right. And then smallholder farmers often cannot provide the collateral requirements for traditional credit products offered by the banks. I think this is what I've actually spoken about earlier on. We know Commercial Bank of Zimbabwe, CBZ, they do provide input loans to about 1,300 smallholder farmers and 800 commercial farmers and conduct their own credit assessments. Yeah. Yes, I know they've got this small business, department, which actually deals with smallholder farmers. Yeah. But I'm yet to see and check to what extent their compliance requirements suit the smallholder farmer. Yeah, because that's the common complaint that we receive. Yes, I want to open a bank account, but I find the requirements too stringent for me. I cannot meet the requirements demanded by the bank, right? And then some banks and insurance companies do provide agricultural insurance for smallholder farmers and commercial farmers. And here we are speaking of the likes of Old Mutual, who are actually offering various types of insurance, including multiple peril crop insurance, weather index insurance, and area yield index insurance. For me, I think that's a great leap forward, right? Insurance of crops is, of paramount importance in light of the persistent droughts that we're actually experiencing as a country. Yeah, and it's always good for the smallholder farmer to have his crop insured against the vagaries of the weather. Yeah, but for the smallholder farmer to uptake insurance as a product, again, he needs to discern the potential benefits arising out of that. Insurance, you need to pay today for a benefit that could be earned tomorrow, especially when a disaster happens. So for the smallholder farmer to really discern to say, okay, I'm paying today for this insurance product. Am I going to get the benefit out of it in future? What if that disaster does not happen? For them, it means the money is sunk. It has gone down the drain. So I think a lot of education is actually needed, yeah, to convince the smallholder farmer on the importance of having their crop and their livestock insured. Next. And then the assessment identified several private sector organizations that provide important digital agriculture ecosystem support services, which enable other digital agriculture products and services to function. Yeah, here we're talking of modular land systems. You can always read for yourselves. And then we also have UNDP, who also provided ecosystem support services in Zimbabwe, especially with the ZRBF, the Zimbabwe Resilience Building Fund, which actually supported the Ministry of Agriculture by purchasing and installing 14 weather stations that enable the Meteorological Services Department to collect weather data for early decision making. Yeah. Again, this comes to issue of predicting the weather. Yeah. We know most of these weather stations are actually located in the urban areas. But with this, I think I'm persuaded to think ZRB actually went a long way towards ensuring that these weather stations are also located in the rural areas. And hence, smallholder farmers are able to actually kind of collect weather information as well as predict the weather, yeah, by accessing these weather stations, which I think it is a great achievement on the part of the ZRBF project. Next. Several government agencies, we are now coming to the ecosystem. That is the players that are involved in promoting digital products and services. And here we're talking about the government ministries and government departments. So one of the major findings was that several government agencies do provide ecosystem support services, right? And here we're talking of the Ministry of ICT, Postal and Courier Services, which plays a key role in training government workers on the usage of ICT tools. Yeah. So a common criticism that comes, especially with agri-techs, is to say when we look at your agri-techs field workers, they are supposed to be supporting the smallholder farmer in terms of trainings, providing trainings, in terms of monitoring the fields for the farmers, in terms of providing advisory services pertaining to crops as well as livestock, and even collecting information pertaining to the production levels, the products sold, the marketing, etc. But it has always been found that these agri-techs field officers, they may have the gadgets by way of tablets, but how to use those tablets, they actually found wanting, right? It's good government provided these tablets to our field workers. But the next begging question is to say, to what extent are the field workers able to utilize those gadgets? That's the issue of skills now, impartation of skills on how to utilize those gadgets, of which I think the ecosystem needs also to come in, chip in, and assist the government in terms of delivering those technical skills to the agri-techs field workers. And then the Ministry of ICT, Postal and Courier Services also supported the Ministry of Agriculture to develop the Agricultural Information Management System, AIMS, which is a database of various resources that provide the ministry with easy access to accurate information related to the agricultural sector. Yeah, it's also good that the government has also embraced ICTs in agriculture. It is a positive step, but much more needs to be done to support that initiative. Yes. Still on the supply side, what are the challenges from the study? Right. It was found out that suppliers of precision agriculture advisory services, they tend to focus on commercial farmers. I think I also alluded to this earlier on, to say when we have these digital products and services targeted especially on the commercial farmers at the expense of the smallholder farmers, it also kind of creates, not discrimination or discriminatory tendencies, but it's kind of a mismatch, considering that our smallholder farmers are actually much more than the commercial farmers. So I think it is food for thought for the mobile network operators to really look into this, to say, how can we balance out things here? How can we balance out service delivery to ensure that maybe we provide it to the commercial farmers market, and we also have some to provide for smallholder farmers. Although I know issues to do with the cost and affordability, they also come in key here. But a way has to be found to ensure that at least the smallholder farmers are also catered in the equation. And then supply side actors endure high marketing costs needed to drive initial uptake of the advisory services, and the maintenance costs needed to sustain user interest. Yeah, I think this also relates to our geographies. When you go to the rural areas, you also find out that, some homesteads are actually sparsely, populated. They are far in between in terms of location. So for mobile network operators to really reach these communities, yes, that actually, involves, lots of overheads. So when they look at the overheads being carried versus the potential benefit for them, it's kind of a mismatch. They are likely to incur losses. Hence, they are not inclined to provide, those digital products and services to those rural communities. and they now tend to focus on the urban only. So that creates some kind of a discordance there. And then previous mobile money regulations have affected the supply mechanization access services. Yeah, I think this goes to POTRAs and other regulators of the ICTs. Yeah, one key complaint and criticism coming out is to say, when it comes to policies regulating digital products and services, it's not consistent. It changes every day, depending on on what side one wakes up on the bed. Yeah, if they wake up on the wrong side of the bed, it's another change in policy. Every change in policy puts the planning into quandary, right? So this is one of the key, complaint that is actually coming out to say to the regulators, to POTRAs, to the various, relevant ministries, at least try to come up with the relevant and consistent policies that actually aid planning. The more you tend to change your policies on a day-by-day basis, it puts the planning in a difficult situation. It confuses both the supply side as well as the demand side. So something has to be done there. The government of Zimbabwe's suspension of mobile money agents activity in 2020 greatly affected the number of mobile money account subscribers, especially our rural farmers who interact more with agents. Yeah, for the rural areas, we know the general dealer shops, the agro dealers who are actually providing services, yeah, in the rural areas. That's where people actually go with their mobile phones to say, okay, I've received funds. Can you assist me here? Yeah, I want to send money for payments. Can you assist me here? Right? But when the government came up with this ban of agents in the rural areas, of mobile money agents, again, it kind of complicated matters, especially for our rural folk. Yeah. And henceforth, it's another requirement or ask, especially for the regulators, to really look into some of these decisions, because it affects the smooth flow of digital products and services, especially in support of agriculture. And then delivering insurance products to smallholder farmers may not be profitable for larger financial institutions. Yeah, I think this one is a given. Again, I also make reference to the clientele size in the rural areas. I also make reference, to the population densities, yeah, to the overheads that are likely to be incurred by the big banks and financial institutions, whereby they'll end up saying it is not profitable for us to reach out to these market segments, right? So this is something that needs to be worked on. Next slide. And then the rate that technology is growing seems to outpace the development of regulations that protect the public, right? It means we are always trailing behind developments in technology, yeah? And the risk of having people being duped by some of these, bogus fly-by-night charlatans is very, very high, right? So in terms of coming up with a proofing system, checks and balances, yeah, to plug potential loopholes and safeguard and protect the user of digital products and services, again, something has to be done, yeah. As we come up with an innovative product and service, you also realize the dark side. It's also far, far ahead in terms of systems to beat what would have actually developed. So something needs to be done to ensure that that is curtailed. And then coming on to the demand side, which is basically the users of digital products and services. Number one, COVID-19, I think this I've already explained earlier, right? But we also find users, suppliers such as CC Sales having adopted their livestock auctions to an online format during COVID-19 when access to in-person auctions were restricted. Yeah, we know CC Sales, they are also into livestock sales, isn't it? Yeah, so they had to actually adopt online, auctions, since congregating people having in-person gatherings was actually restricted or even banned during COVID-19, right? And then many agribusinesses started to use virtual platforms to host the virtual field days that allowed commercial farmers to share their learnings with each other and receive technical farming support. These are some of the innovations that came that arose during the COVID-19 era. And we are saying, yes, COVID again was bad, but like I said, every cloud has got its silver lining. It actually prompted people to come up with other innovative strategies to ensure that information was well received and disseminated during the COVID-19 era. WhatsApp is proving to be the mostly widely used platform by agribusinesses because of its popularity. It's cheap to use and it offers two-way communication and instant feedback. If I were to conduct a survey, be it in the urban area and be it in the rural area, on the usage and uptake of digital services, I'm sure WhatsApp will come out as one of the most popular, tools that is being used because of its various advantages listed there. It's something that we can actually build upon and leverage on. And then bulk SMS messaging is another widely used method by stakeholders to disseminate information on prices, upcoming announcements, promotions, and farming advice. So the issue of delivering marketing intelligence, especially to our smallholder farmers, is really, really very, very important. And hence, we have to make use of bulk SMS in order to reach a wider audience of our smallholder farmers. One, it's very, very cheap, right? And two, it's easily accessible. And then several agribusinesses and cooperatives accept and make farmer payments via digital channels. Here we've got examples of companies like Zimbabwe Super Seeds, which uses the KEBS text-to-cash platform for farmer transactions. Yeah, it's a product that has been proven to be workable. It's actually working for the smallholder farmers, especially in Masvingo. So what's needed now is for companies like Zimbabwe Super Seed to actually upscale on the usage of their digital products. And then several organizations accept farmer payments for inputs through EcoCash. Yeah, this is a no-brainer. It's given that EcoCash is proving to be a very, very effective medium of actually conducting financial transactions. Yes. Insights, especially for the development organizations, the NGO sector, right, donors, etc. Many development organizations that have programs in Zimbabwe's agricultural sector leverage digital advisory tools to reach program participants and disseminate information. I think earlier on I've spoken about WHH and their product, Kurima Mari, right? They've used the InfoBeep bulk SMS platform to send messages with farmer content generated by their organizations. Some development programs have made use of mobile applications like Kurima Mari application, which was developed by World Against Hunger. And then Old Mutual, I think I've also alluded to it earlier on about their weather-based weather index insurance, which they're actually piloting in most rural communities. And even in wildlife and conservation, we've begun to see some organizations using digital tools to collect and analyze their data. Many development organizations that have programs, I think can we have the next slide? Interviews revealed that SMART is the most well-known and preferred data collection and analysis tool among the wildlife and conservation sectors. Yeah, those who are knowledgeable with SMART, I guess you can also attest to this. Yeah, and also share your experiences on how SMART is actually, proving to be workable and beneficial for both the urban and the rural population. Coming on to the demand side in terms of challenges, yeah, many smallholder farmers, especially the older farmers, have limited knowledge and the capacity to use digital tools. So when it comes to uptake and usage of digital products and services, you realize they are mostly popular with the young people, with the youths, because our youth are techno-savvy, right? But with the older folks now, yeah, it's not proving to be very, very effective. Yeah, they actually find these gadgets so sophisticated, and hence they are not so much inclined to use these digital platforms. Access to finance is another challenge, especially for the majority of smallholder farmers who do not have immovable collateral that is required by the banks for lending, right? It always comes out. Major banks and financial institutions, they find our smallholder farmers as a very risky target market, and hence are not willing to provide loans to them. They say they don't have collateral security, yeah, to cushion them against the default risk. So what needs to be done? Yeah, can't this ICT fraternity come up with other innovative products and services to assist our smallholder farmers so that they are able to access finance to support their agricultural activities? This is food for thought. We can still ponder about it. Then the high cost of mobile data is cited as a key barrier affecting adoption of digital tools among both smallholder farmers and commercial farmers. I think Zimbabwe is one of the countries with the highest cost of data on the continent. Wherever you go, people always ask, hi, you're paying so much. No, this is too much. This is not tenable at all. Yes, portals will come in here and say we are regulating. But even when they regulate, the cost of data still remains high beyond the affordability levels of the users. What needs to be done is something that we need to sit down as an ecosystem to really say, how best can we come up with an optimal cost for data usage in this country, right? And then some farmers are not willing to pay for advisory services, such as weather information services, and the farmer access to market information remains a major challenge in the sector, right? As I said, our farmers, they learn by doing, they learn by seeing, and they also appreciate and adopt a technology by after having discerned the potential benefits, right? As long as the discernment of those potential benefits is not clear to them, they do not adopt and they do not uptake and they do not utilize that product and service. So what needs to be done to convince and persuade them to uptake and utilize our products and services? Again, it remains food for thought for us. Many agribusinesses and development, I know that some rural areas still do not have connectivity and access to the internet. Again, it still comes to the coverage and the installation of infrastructure, right, which tends to favor the urban against the rural. The sustainability of digital tools post-project is a key concern cited by development partners. Yes, we may have the development partners coming in, introducing new digital products and services, but that is done under an existing activity or an existing project. But when the project comes to an end, and that donor, that development partner moves on, you always find that there is a limitation when it comes to continuity and sustainability, right? It's like the users will be saying, this technology belonged to a donor. It was introduced by a development organization. Now that the activity, the project is ended, we are no longer partaking of it. That's the end of it. So that tends to affect sustainability. We need to come up with other innovative models and strategies to ensure that once an activity or once a project comes to an end, there remains continuity, there remains sustainability, especially on the part of the users. We don't have to be entirely dependent on donor funding. Donor funding, yes, is there today, but there's no guarantee that it will be there tomorrow. So in the event that donor funding is not there tomorrow, what fallback measures do we have to ensure that there is continuity and there is sustainability beyond the cessation of a project? Again, it's something that we may need to think about, right? And then many agribusinesses expressed concerns about the unstable policy environment in Zimbabwe. I think this I've already alluded to earlier on. Then recommendations. Yeah, every study, every assessment do also come up with its own recommendations. So these are some of the recommendations that came up. Number one, let's try to leverage public-private partnerships to promote offline digital solutions, right? We are saying as an ecosystem, we are not an island unto ourselves. Or even as mobile network operators, we are not islands unto ourselves. We live in an ecosystem. How best can we share ideas? How best can we share knowledge to ensure that at least we serve our clientele effectively and efficiently, right? So some people actually saying, or the study actually recommended, that let's leverage on PPPs, right? So that we upscale whatever work we are doing. We promote it, the kind of work in a sustainable, efficient, and effective manner. Recommendation number two, let's also discuss with the government of Zimbabwe the impact of directives on suspension of mobile money agent activities and the reduction of transaction limits. Like I said earlier on, when the government came up with a policy ban of agents, it really affected, most users, be it in the rural and urban areas. It confused the market. right? So before some of these policy announcements are done or are made, let's also have our input taken into account as an ecosystem. It's our role and duty also to advise government whenever it's actually formulating its policies, especially as they affect this kind of industry. Let us not confuse the market. 3, let's encourage the development of digital products and services with potential for commercial viability. Yeah, the study also recommended the use of products like matching grants for cost sharing purposes with the private technology companies to increase uptake and usage, right? Come up with the matching grants. We have the development partners there. They do have their grants. We've got private companies that are keen to actually increase their market coverage, deepen their markets, come up with the new products and services. How best can we partner and come up with the co-financing that is workable or win-win for everyone, right? So matching grants there are actually recommended as a solution. If I'm to put $1 on the table, you should also be prepared to put your $1 on the table. And then we combine, come up with a partnership. And then we know we are co-financing this activity. At least there's ownership, yeah? There's a show or demonstration of commitment by both parties. So that's the way to go, yeah? Each one of us has to put their skin, yeah, on the table to show their level of commitment. Let's institute incentive-based risk sharing for agricultural lending. Things like credit risk guarantees to providers, yeah, just to mitigate default risk on their part. To say, okay, if you invest in this way, if you invest so much, right, us as development partners, as NGOs, as donors, we are willing to set aside a guarantee, a credit guarantee, to cushion you against the default risk. Yeah, it's an incentive which some of our mobile network operators or players in the digital space really want and appreciate, as they know that their losses will be covered. 5, let's encourage technology providers to target the agricultural sector and smallholder farmers through tax incentives. Tax incentive policy roadmap to porters for consideration, right? So tax incentives are they're really being preferred or recommended here, so as to encourage maybe providers to uptake and utilize digital products and services. Promote coordination among agricultural donors and create opportunities for providers to showcase their products. So a working group is being proposed here to discuss digital technology developments. A working group consisting of these various players that I've alluded to earlier on. Finance comes in, our implementing partners come in, the donor community, development partners, insurance companies, all these players, they come in. Even the academia, they also come in, put our heads together, come up with a working group and do the planning, right? It's very, very important. On the demand side, these are the recommendations. Let's implement digital literacy and the digital financial literacy campaigns, yeah? It's work that still needs to be done, especially in the remotest parts of the country. People don't know what the digital products and services are. A lot of education, awareness creation is actually required in those geographies. So it's our role as players to undertake those campaigns. Increase awareness of digital agriculture technologies among implementing partners. Yeah? The way our implementing partners do their messaging, provide their trainings, disseminate information, they have to go via digital. Yeah, it will be easier, especially for our constituencies, our smallholder farmers, to appreciate when they see these things happening in reality. And then 3, let's increase access to affordable financing for youth and women through blended finance. These are some of the marginalized groups, women and youth. So let's try to ensure that they also access these digital tools, yeah, for their benefit. 4, let's train government agencies on emerging digital technologies. Yeah, this I think I've also spoken about it earlier on. Recommendations for the ecosystem. Number 1, let's encourage usage of smart for data collection among implementing partners working in wildlife and conservation. And then number 2, let's provide technical support for innovation hubs and ecosystem actors. We have got innovation hubs like EcoNet's Muzinda Hub initiative, the Tech Village, universities, etc. They should be in a position to assist in terms of provision of technical support, right? And then number 3, promote a more collaborative digital ecosystem with increased sharing of data and resources. Yeah, this I cannot overemphasize. Let's move on. So in conclusion of our study, we are saying some good work, some commendable work has been introduced in trying to promote digital products and services in agriculture. This is commendable. Every journey starts with a single step, and I'm happy something has been done. Digital products and services have been introduced, but we are also saying a lot more work needs to be done. We are not yet there when we compare ourselves as a country to other African countries. Yeah, we are still lagging behind. So as much as we have piloted and introduced, that should not be the end. Let's go up the ladder. Huh? Let's try and do much more work to ensure that these digital products and services reach even the remotest areas of the country. But in so doing, as like earlier on, no organization can do this alone. It requires what I can call a holistic approach, right, by all key stakeholders to accelerate, deepen, and upscale the digitalization initiative. Government on its own cannot do this single-handedly. It also requires the support of the whole ecosystem so that we realize our goal, yeah, to ensure that yes, we become a media, country by 2030, and also to ensure that we revolutionize our agriculture by way of, introducing of digital products and services by our smallholder farmers and other agro-value chain actors. Right, next. Well, it remains for me to say thank you so much for attending the listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, for the presentation. In the interest of time, we'll show our questions. For now, we allowed Veltring Ayupe to present as one of the implementers of Digital 2 in the advisory service and learn on their journey in terms of implementation of digital agriculture. Nigel, the floor is over to you. Thank you so much. You come back just now after Nigel. Session. Around this area. Oh, okay.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nigel Gambanga, and I'm from Veldhunga Hilfe. Our name is a bit of a tongue twister, so we normally stick to just WHH. So for the purpose of the discussion and the chat that's going to happen afterwards, you can always call us WHH, and we'll explain the folklore behind the name afterward. And I'm here to talk about one of our digital innovations as WHH. We are an implementing partner that works in food systems transformation in Zimbabwe. But most people understand us and know us as a partner that's active in the agriculture space. And we developed a solution called the Kurima Mari mobile application, which was being referenced during the USAID presentation. And I'm going to touch on our journey in developing the application and some of the learnings that might be of value to the team that's gathered here. So Kurima Mari is essentially a smartphone mobile application that's designed to assist smallholder farmers improve their incomes. And the idea behind Kurima Mari is to provide tips that relate to smallholder production covering different value chains. And the way the application is structured is it has guides that walk farmers through their production journey all the way to market identification and market penetration, with a host of other multimedia components that add value to the user experience. Next slide. So a couple of push factors led us to the Kurima Mari application app. In 2015, WHH was exploring ideas around digital innovations for agriculture, looking at the extension side of things. And we had dabbled with a couple of solutions that focused on SMS extension. SMS is probably the most common and it's the most ubiquitous way to send information to smallholder farmers. USAID already shared insights on that. And we felt that there was more that we could do that went beyond just basic SMS. And under a FCDO funded project, which was still DFID back then, we started some research around the thinking for a solution that would address some of the challenges smallholders farmers faced and would still add value that went beyond basic SMS. So a couple of challenges emerged, and seeing that the majority of the people in this room have a very good understanding of Zimbabwean agriculture, these are essentially the usual suspects. We've got a high extension to farmer ratio. We have 1 extension worker to 800 smallholder farmers. We've got mobility challenges that were being experienced by the extension officers themselves. And this is something that's been talked about extensively when it comes to information delivery and supporting smallholder farmers in terms of production outcomes. Then we had the issue of poor road networks, specifically last mile delivery of information in all the communities where we were working, and we happened to work in all of rural Zimbabwe, essentially. We'd identified that issue that information doesn't get to the smallholder farmer at the last leg. There's usually that gap that emerges where some information is delivered, or there's a custodian who holds that information and it doesn't always get to the smallholder farmer on time. And then there was a demand for real-time communication with regards to extension services and market information, as well as a high level of farm gate activities. Some of the participants in the market side of things in smallholder farmer, in the smallholder farmer space, used to take advantage of information gaps. So there was a lot of activity around that we felt a solution could come in to address. Next slide. And there are also limits to the way agriculture information or the knowledge around agriculture is held by the custodians themselves and distributed to the farmers themselves and how they keep it, as well as lack of training on how to use particular tools or solutions. But in looking at all of that, there were a couple of opportunities that were emerging. We're trying to look at some of the problems and look at them and view them as opportunities. The USAID study talked a lot about the statistics on mobile penetration, smartphone penetration, internet usage in Zimbabwe. All of those gave us indicators that there would be room to develop a solution that would be adopted by a greater part of the smallholder farmer community. So we've got a huge mobile penetration rate. We had a boom or a growth in smartphone penetration around that time. This was around 2015, 2016, and we're still firmly in the US dollar era. And there was also a huge appetite for the adoption of new technologies like smartphones in rural communities where we were working. So all of that gave us a clear picture that we could develop a solution and that there was a need that could be addressed or met by something that was comprehensive as the applications that we ended up developing. And in doing this, as I mentioned, all of this was birthed in an FCDO funded project called LFSP. So we had partners within that consortium, and you can essentially split them into 2 camps. We had partners that offered technical support, and then we had partners that were big on the resource side of things. The donor, being FCDO, was in the lead, but WHH also put $1 on the table, to borrow a USAID term. And we had other programs that were also active in Zimbabwe, which we were part of in those different consortiums, such as the BF. And they also assisted with funds in terms of propagation of the application. And we had FAO, which was represented as part of LFSP, as well as BMZ and UNDP as well. But on the technical side, WHH took the lead in terms of application development, and we brought on board all the other partners within the consortia that we were working with that had different specialities to assist in fine-tuning the kind of material that would come up with the application itself. And this slide, even though it's just 3 pictures, will help me elaborate on our journey. Like I said, 2015, 2016 was the conceptualizing and prototyping stage. We started off with a very basic version of what a mobile application is supposed to look like for smallholder agriculture. We got some interesting feedback from the first batch of users who were engaging within the Midlands area. And all that feedback gave us clear insights on what would work for an application suited for that user market. And the primary component of all of that was user-based feedback and user-based design, because we were trying to gather insights from past experiences in app development for smallholder farming communities, not only within agriculture, but in other areas such as WASH and education. So we knew that user feedback would have to be central. So that was the greater part of what we're doing between 2015 and 2016. We developed a prototype. And once we were a bit confident about what we had gathered and what we had developed as the first version, we decided to roll it out, which fed into the 2017-2018 season. And for the rollout, we experimented with the couple of different approaches that we thought would get us greater mileage. We obtained some method approaches that have been used in the extension approaches, in other extension programs. But during that phase as well, we're gathering a lot of user feedback, and that helped us create a second version of the application as well as a third version. And the progression that happened between the very first version of the prototype up to version 3 of the application indicates a lot of feedback that came from the users in terms of what they liked, what they didn't like, how they were relating to the application, what was actually functional, or what they understood about the application. And more importantly, it gave us insight on aspects such as digital literacy, which USAID also uncovered in its own study. We realized that in as much as we're trying to promote a single solution, there's still a lot of work that needed to be done in terms of digital literacy, which helped form a lot of our programming around the promotion of that application, as well as all things to do with mobile digital solutions in agriculture. And also during that second phase, we identified other gaps that we knew that the application wasn't going to be able to solve or address. And in later programs, which I'm going to talk about in a few slides, we developed solutions that answered or related to those problems that couldn't be answered by Kurima Mari. We realized that you can't have one application to answer all things. And during that phase, that's when we identified the gaps that would later be addressed in the ZAGP program itself. And then the third phase, which is 2019 to 2023, it's essentially been about the spin-offs based off the feedback that received in phase 2, as well as the global rollout, which I'm going to talk about in the subsequent slides, of course. In terms of application features, I'm going to breeze quickly through them because I noticed that at least half of the users already have the application on their phone. But for the uninitiated, the primary use case for the Kurima Mari application is the extension advisory component under the crops and livestock. And we've got over 25 value chains represented there. We developed the content for English, Shona, and Ndebele speakers, which covered the majority of people in the areas that we were working with. We ensured that the content itself would be offline because the issues that were being raised by USAID about cost of data were some of the feedback points that were coming from the users we engaged with. So it had to be multilingual. It had to have offline access. It had to have content that would be easy to understand. And most importantly, it had to have information that was relevant for the producer, for the producers themselves. And some of that feedback put us in a very clear position on how we're supposed to partner with a content partner. In our case, the content partner was the Ministry of Lands and Agriculture. And they played a very central role in helping us curate the kind of content we wanted for the application. And they were using their database of information that they've developed for smallholder farmer extension. And they helped narrow it down to what would be applicable as a mobile version of that extension information for the different value chains. And then beyond that, we'd get feedback from specific user groups who would say, yes, this is working for this particular value chain. I understand this. Can we have additional information on A, B, C, D? all of that fed into that iteration stage that I talked about. So that's the primary use case for the Kurima Mari application. We also have agribusiness and extension contacts as one of the other components of the application, where farmers can access what is essentially a directory of agro players within their particular districts or regions. And we're looking at everything from extension officers, market off-takers, buyers for potential goods or products that are specific to value chains. And the directory itself has all the necessary contact information. And our role was, of course, to make sure that the information would be updated from time to time and identifying other players that were relevant for the smallholder farming communities that we're working with. We also developed a marketplace for the application. This was probably the most ambitious feature we added to the application. This was supposed to be your first attempt at e-commerce online trading for smallholder farmers. Any farmer who created an account with the application could advertise whatever they were selling, put a specific price, share their contact information, and any potential buyer would be able to reach them. Interestingly enough, we realized that this particular feature didn't do as well in rural communities, but it took off with the urban agriculture community when we're now promoting the application beyond the smallholder farming community in rural areas. Urban users, before COVID and during COVID, were looking for the best channel or the closest channel to promote their products and services. So the moment we started preaching about Kurima Mari, they found another outlet and they started using it aggressively. And the smallholder farmer in the rural community would often complain about issues such as data, because this feature was subject to the availability of having data in your smartphone. Next slide. And we also approached the multimedia aspect on Kurima Mari. We made sure that it would have downloadable content on podcasts and videos covering specific value chains and giving how-tos on how to produce different crops and how to tend to different forms of livestock. And we were gathering all this material from some production activities that we had done with our partners, the Ministry of Agriculture, in the earlier stages of the project and concurrently during the development of the application. This is what we ended up putting up on the application and giving users an option to download. And another feature was the gross margin calculator, which is, as the name suggests, something that a smallholder farmer would be able to use to determine whether or not they can make a profit on a particular range of inputs that they have before they actually get into the farming season. And this proved very critical for the market components of the different projects and programs that we're working in, because gross margin calculation had always been done by hand. But now we're offering the digital solution to say, if you're going to be in sweet potatoes, you need to know how much you're going to get, and you know that you have so much that's invested for A, B, C, D. Just go to the calculator, enter the inputs, and you'll be able to get a rough idea of the sort of return that you're going to get. So this feature proved to be quite a hit, particularly for market extension services. And we also had a personalized seasonal calendar added to the application. This was also a data-specific component of the application. Users can essentially go get information on what they're supposed to do during the different stages of a particular value chain. If you are into maize production, for example, you know that you're starting your production cycle on the 15th of November. You enter that date. It starts giving you notifications that are specific to everything that you're supposed to do during that farming season. We developed this with a lot of assistance from the Ministry of Lands and Agriculture, of course. But the big push there was to make sure that farmers don't always act surprised when they realize that they skipped a particular stage in the production cycle. So this is what we're trying to promote with this particular feature. Then we also had the weather and climate feature, which was also data specific. A user in a particular district could get information on the weather for planning purposes, which would of course inform better outcomes in production. And this is a tabular presentation of our growth trajectory for the Kurima Mari application. You'll notice that we split it by specific provinces. These are the areas where we had a foothold based on our programming and the partner projects and programs we're working in. And this essentially tracks growth from 2016 to 2022, whereby by the end of 2022, we had about 102,000 users on the application, starting from a small user base of 2,000 back in 2016, which was still, on a one-to-one basis, and we're working with particular farmer groups. And I'll touch a bit on what gave us sort of like a bit of steam to be able to push those kinds of numbers. Our strong points, other than the fact that we were working with the Ministry of Agriculture, was the fact that we had community-based mobilizers. These were part of the different projects and programs we were working in. They became essentially the product ambassadors. We made sure that they knew everything about the application. We made sure that they had data to be able to demonstrate some of the features of the application. We, in addition to the extended training that they received, we provided additional support such as mobile handsets. This was something that the donor FCDO had promoted and encouraged, because they felt that digital agriculture was something that could be spurred by actually having devices in the hands of the product champions themselves. We're also working with the public extension officers, Agritechs being the lead partner, of course, but other government departments related to the work that we're doing in extension. For example, the Ministry of Social Welfare, if they wanted to talk about rural finance, the application as a component on that. So we trained them on that as well, and they also became people who were promoting the application in all the extension services. We also had digital literacy clinics and roadshows. This was essentially the core of the work that we're doing in the field for the promotion phase, which was phase 2. We realized, as I mentioned, that the low levels of digital literacy meant that no matter how good the application was, if users didn't understand anything about not only the application, but how to use their devices or optimize the device usage, we weren't going to get any great conversion, and it wasn't going to be an effective tool after all. So we invested a lot in digital literacy, not only specific to the application, but in all things to do with digital agriculture. And we're promoting not only the app, but other solutions that we felt the communities would benefit from. We also promoted the different channels of agriculture extension that we're using, and made sure that those same communities would play a product champion role after we left the project or after we were no longer in the area. And we did this in tandem with the work that the different government departments were doing. So just as an example, if there was an extension activity being done by a particular government department and they were meeting probably 40 farmers, we would get a slot, talk about the application, also get installations done, because we figured out that offline installations were a faster way of actually getting people to use the application rather than expecting them to go on Google Play and then having to explain all of that. So we did that extensively in multiple provinces and multiple districts, which gave us the end conversion that we mentioned there. And the other sweet part was, of course, the user-centered design and partnerships approach, where any sort of feedback was supposed to be looked at as something that could help improve the application. So there was a lot of investment in continually improving the application and making changes based on what users were telling us. And on the partnership side, which is the flip side of that coin, it wasn't just WHH and the project teams under those consortium doing the feedback gathering. We had the public sector partners now playing that role, where they'd give us regular updates on what they were getting from the ground every time they talked about the application or promoted it, or in follow-up engagements. And in terms of ownership and future plans for Kurima Mari, currently Kurima Mari remains in the ownership of WHH. This was something that had been agreed on prior to its development and getting into the LFSP project with FCDO. And what we've done is we've consolidated our position with the application in Zimbabwe, trying to make sure that on different fora people know about it, particularly when we're dealing with smallholder farmers. And in all our programming, because we do a lot of work in food systems, we still rely on the application as sort of like a go-to reference tool. What's helped us in that regard, of course, is how the Ministry of Agriculture recognizes it as an application that they played a role in. So they also actively promote it, which makes our job a whole lot easier. But we have been looking at expansion into other countries. Kurima Mari was spun off into two different versions in two different countries. There's Aulimi, which is now being used in Malawi, launched by the WHH team there, and I Know Farm, which is in Uganda. For both these applications, as the Zimbabwe team, we played a technical assisting role and helped walk them through some of what we had learned. But their user journeys have been a bit different because of the kind of communities that they're trying to push the applications to. But we realized that there's a huge market for solutions that speak to what smallholder farmers need, particularly from a mobile phone. So we aren't going to stop with just those two countries. We've been extending our footprint in ICT4D in Francophone Africa with another application under the WHH arm. But in those areas, we're also just in the early stages of trying to determine what will work in terms of mobile agriculture extension for the smallholder farmers in those areas, in those countries. We've also integrated the application with other services. There've been other variations of the application. I'm glad that USAID already talked about the Kurima Mari poultry application, which was a version of the application designed for smallholder farmers and producers in poultry that are trying to scale up in the poultry value chain specifically. We also did that with the beef value chain. Both these applications were funded by EU, and in a similar fashion, we used the feedback that we gathered from the users that we're working with in those different particular projects. And it was also a consortium approach where we had technical support, not only from the government, but from other NGOs that were participating in those particular projects. And since this was a follow-up to the work that we'd done with Kurima Mari, there was a lot of input based on what they felt could have been done better in the version of the Kurima Mari app that we'd done the very first time. And now we're trying to integrate it with other products. There's an application that we developed called AgriShare, which is essentially a competitor to the Via tractor solution. And we did cross promotion for AgriShare and Kurima Mari. But not only that, we're looking at partnerships. We are actively looking for partnerships with other entities that have digital agricultural solutions that can complement what we've done with Kurima Mari, or at least try to make the most of the ground that we've covered, seeing that we have a fairly decent user base within the smallholder farming community. And having said that, I've ended my presentation.
Thank you so much, Nigel. A round of applause for Nigel. I'll invite Kennedy to come for questions, comments from the House. We, in the interest of the 19 participants that are online, we need you to have mics, so that's why I've put us chairs here. But whilst they take their seats, one question that I have for the forum, the association, is, you know, technology is advancing at quite a faster rate. If you look at the time the USAID study was done, the development that had happened, the things that had happened already in the industry, there are so many. One of the questions was, one of the recommendations was to have coordination among its donors, partners, development partners. Development partners, we have access to farmers, we have knowledge on what they need, since we work with them on a daily basis. Private sector and tech developers, they have the expertise on developing these tools. We only talked about advisory services, but we met other players in the e-commerce, irrigation. You know, there are really cool technologies where you can control your pumps from your smartphone. So is there an opportunity for the Market Lineage Association to house this community of practice for people who have interest in digital agriculture? It could be an online platform, not necessarily to meet physical. A site, it's something that I asked Michael, and I said it's up to the members. It's something that I would want us to think about as we discuss this session. In the interest of time, I'll ask us to make our comments straight to the point, because we are supposed to cut off at 4, but I think we'll get a small extension. Keep our questions straight and short, and introduce yourself, where you are from, so that the panel has, the presenters have an idea of whom they are interacting with.
Awesome. John Michael with MLA.
Still Wilson from teacher. I'm a guest. Alex Carter from FAO.
Regina Fine, WHH.
Mark Benson from World Vision.
Olivia Mpogo from Farms.
I've got from the Kush Sierra from Korean.
Graham Murdoch from PHR.
From the missionary.
Basically, David from Sydney.
National Party from Harvest West. Since I'm with the yacht. Down Technoser.
Dennis Remex.
I've got the lyrics. So much chaos.
Stan from Australia.
Thanks so much for the introductions. I'll open up. I will start with the people who are in here. We have a couple of questions and comments online. I think I'll be alternating. So we'll take the first round, 3 questions and comments from the audience. There are any? If you can show by raise of the hands. Alex.
Hi, thanks, Bobby, and thanks. One of the things I'm not a technical person, but one of the areas you didn't touch on, Kennedy, in particular, is internet coverage throughout the country. And I mean, we're aware that that's possibly an issue. And it's all very well people having the mobile phones, but in terms of internet coverage, it seems to me that needs some attention as well, because there's some remote areas that don't have any access. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's my impression. I may be outside your terms of reference in your study, but perhaps you looked at that. Thank you.
Would you want to take it, Kenneth?
Yeah. I think in my presentation, there was a slide on internet penetration, if I remember very well.
Yeah. 6
Mm.
target. Yeah.
Maybe by just a way of comment, since they participated in the assessment, we did meet with the telecoms providers, the 3, and I think a lot has changed. Actually, Econet has. I mentioned Econet because they've made lots of investment between July and now in terms of improving their base stations. With their annual financial results, they are making lots of investment in terms of internet coverage and base stations, but there's still a lot to be done. Since we have Minister of ICT, I'm not sure if you have a comment on this. I'm aware that you have been trying to make efforts to have that drive of different MNOs sharing infrastructure so that we have wider coverage across the different rural areas. Not sure if you have a comment on that. Sorry to to put you on the spot.
What I can only say is it's still working in progress.
Okay.
So Kennedy was decrying the low sort of internet coverage in the rural areas, but it really boils down to profitability. If a company's not gonna, if the company's gonna lose money because rural people probably can't afford to use a lot of data, so to put a big investment like a base station somewhere, it doesn't really make a lot of commercial sense, and I think that might be a key problem.
Yeah, that's true. That's correct. Yeah. These mobile network operators, well, they are private companies. They are there for the money and they are profit driven. And before they come up with a decision to invest or not to invest, to establish a base station, be it in an urban or rural area, they have to conduct a viability study to say, are we going to recoup what you have invested, given maybe the clientele that we are targeting? Are they in a position to afford our products and services? Are they in a position, do they have the means, the wherewithal to pay? You see, so these are some of the key determinants, key factors that they take into account when they decide to make an investment or not. And granted, setting up a base station is not child's play. It's a very expensive undertaking. Yeah. So before they actually decide to say, okay, let's install a base station in a rural area, they have to look at prospects for viability.
So
Yeah.
the consultants be looking to maybe a public sector investment or subsidy that could.
Yeah, in a way, we've actually recommended maybe triple Ps, public-private partnerships, as an alternative, strategy or an alternative to, to use. But again, it boils down, it comes back to the parties, whether they do agree on that kind of, framework, sharing framework. Yeah. But yes, it's an investment. It actually, requires lots of, financial, muscles for one to undertake such a massive, investment.
Maybe Nigel can make a comment.
As an implementing partner, what we've discovered over the past, it's almost 10 years now, is that the best thing is to innovate around the infrastructure that is available, hard and soft. Number one. Number two, USAID has already emphasized the triple P approach. There are different projects, endeavors, attempts at trying to improve access to data that you can probably tap into if you're trying to develop solutions around agriculture. One that comes top of mind, I don't know if Portras is in the room specifically, but they have community information centers that are now in essentially every district. And we have been investigating the potential use of those CICs as aggregation points where users can bring their phone, they can update whatever information they need to update on their device. They can get free access to internet, which is being provided by the government. At least they're using their taxes for that, and make the most of that, working with the Minister of ICT, Portras, and the Minister of Agriculture. And then another initiative is GIGA, which is UNICEF's approach for internet in every school, with a specific focus in rural communities. And we haven't had much headway, at least in that regard, but seeing that UN is represented in a lot of ways here, I think it's something that can be explored to use those same centers as areas where smallholder farmers can still access data and use that internet to get the best outcome for what they're trying to get, what they're trying to do.
Thank you, Nigel. Maybe also on the coverage, I'm thinking the developments around Starlink, how are they going to change the whole coverage issue that we are discussing? Perhaps this is why I'm so interested to have a community of practice that discuss this ever-changing environment, but it's something to reflect on. I'll turn on to questions online. There's a question on around agri-techs having challenges using gadgets. Maybe this is for you, Kennedy. What's been your experience? Because the question is, isn't this a generalized statement? How true is it that agri-techs is facing challenges using these tools? How sophisticated from the experience and exposure that you have had? When we interacted with the Ministry of ICT, they have a mandate to support line ministries, capacitate their staff, I think on a basic ICDL course, which they are supporting agri-techs. How prevalent are this challenge of extension officers on the ground having challenges of using these digital tools? I think this is in reference to advisory tools. Maybe the House can also attest those who are working in the field.
Yes, we do applaud the Ministry of Agriculture in terms of availing these gadgets to the field officers. But in the interactions that we've had with the field officers in the respective provinces where we work, they've actually confirmed to us to say, okay, yes, the ministry did a good thing. They provided us with the gadgets, but somehow we don't have adequate skills to utilize them, you see. So, yeah, I'm not so sure whether it varies or depends on various locations, but that's the kind of general sentiment that we have actually received from the concerned parties, which are the field officers, to say, yes, we don't seem to have, the requisite skills. And even when it comes to the trainings that we are supposed to be offered so that we partake of these services, they don't seem to be so forthcoming. Maybe it is to relate to financial challenges, maybe by the various line ministries in terms of conducting the trainings to these field officers countrywide. But that seems to be rife. Yeah, that seems to be rife.
Thank you. Regina, you had comments. Elizabeth, who online will come to you just after Regina.
Yeah, I'm always a bit skeptical when I hear that the capacities are not there. I mean, there's a lot of experience from the RIMS as well. This is the WASH system information, rural WASH information management system, which had been working well for a while. It was supposed to record, for example, whether a ball is working or not, whether a well is working or not, water supply in the rural areas. But then we see now that in many districts it's not working anymore. That and one of the big problems is actually also airtime provided. And then with the cost of airtime, this is, I think, becoming really a vicious circle. And I wonder if it's for the aims getting in the same direction, that in the end there won't be airtime, and this is then the end of the program. And yeah, I think as long as airtime is so expensive, this brings us to what you presented as well. I think there's this high, what was called consumer readiness, but low in affordability. And I think this is one of the main findings of the study in the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. With regards to data costs, when we met the MNOs during the key informant, they were of the view that Zimbabwe have one of the cheapest data in the region. They cited that we have low incomes. I think there are stats that came from, I saw on Twitter from the Minister of ICT, which referenced to that the data cost in Zimbabwe was significantly low, but it's up for argument to discuss which is which. Elizabeth, over to you. You can unmute and talk.
Yes, thank you so much. I think there's so much. I'm Elizabeth from Nairobi, Kenya, and working with Christian Aid, and really good work I have seen that you have done with that application.
All right, maybe you can type the question. We can't hear you. I'll take another set of questions from the room. Pelagius.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the two presentations. Mine is on Kurima, the Kurima Mari mobile app. Just to seek clarity on sustainability, bit, how you have crafted it. Because from experience on the number of other such apps that we have tried to do, even under therapy, the challenge has been to initiate user charges. I don't know how this one is funded, how it is structured, and going forward from a sustainability perspective, what are the strategies that they put in place?
Can I respond?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for the killer question. Well, the sustainability aspect was the one thing we spent 5 years trying to figure out. We explored post-project partnerships with, we engaged ZFU, we had a partnership with them. Things didn't play out the way we anticipated because of a number of reasons, but essentially as an entity that had a direct interest in farmer extension, they wanted to assume all the costs and then use the tool as something that would be an extension of the work that they already do. But due to a number of issues that emerged around viability and the long-term approach to it, it didn't take off as planned. So we ended up assuming the cost as WHH, which is why I mentioned that we currently maintain ownership of the application 100%. The thinking for us as an entity was that seeing that it was essentially feeding into the learnings of what would be used for rollout phases in other countries, would maintain ownership of the app and maintenance. But there's a cost attached to it, which any entity that wants to replicate that or develop their own application also has to face. I know that under ZRBF, as you mentioned, something that was also kicked about. I know that the players in ZAGP will tell you a lot of stories about, the difficult choices that had to be made about what was sustainable and what was not. But the overall element is that if you're going to develop it, you should assume that part of the cost is what you're going to carry, which is what we ended up with. We're left holding the bag in that respect. But we realized that the market is interested in these kinds of solutions. They're willing to put some sort of investment, but only when certain conditions are right. And regrettably, at the moment, not a lot of players are willing to honestly say, look, we'll throw in maybe 40% of the cost or 60%. What they have told us is that, look, we'll look at this further down the line when things are probably a bit more stable and look more favorable in terms of what we want to achieve. So that has been our experience here.
Thank you, Nigel. I hope Thierry, this partly answers the question you had online with a similar question. Then there's a question online, Nigel, whilst you're on there. Is there a specific reason why Kurima Mari has not reached other provinces? Specifically,
okay, the slide gave the wrong impression. Kurima Mari is open to all of Zimbabwe. We had an aggressive promotional campaign for it that was countrywide. It's just that the provinces where we shared data on, these were provinces under ZRBF, LFSP, also under ZAGP, in areas where we could essentially track offline installations and talk about or report clearly on who had actually installed the application. It is being used in all other areas, Harare, Bulawayo, Masvingo. Go to any province. If you talk about Kurima Mari with the key stakeholders, for example, the Ministry of Lands and Agriculture, they'll tell you about it. They'll give you some anecdotal evidence or information on how people have adopted the application. But we based our reporting only in areas where we could officially track the usage and adoption. But it's available in Masvingo if you want to use it.
Thank you. Then if there are other programs that may want to use Kurima Mari, how do they go about it? Are you open for partnerships outside the donor-funded programs that WHH has? Maybe another organization has an interest and they would want to use such an application?
Yes, 100%. We developed the application with the understanding that it was open for use and adoption by any entity that is interested in promoting agriculture in Zimbabwe. That was the unmentioned condition for the Ministry of Lands and Agriculture to actually participate, because they felt that by doing all the necessary technical support, they were fulfilling their mandate to share this with everyone. So any entity with a private sector, public sector department, anyone who's for profit trying to reach a particular user segment, they can use the application. We have information or knowledge that can be used to either onboard new users in particular areas. We can even partner around digital literacy, which is a key component of making sure that the application actually achieves its intended objectives. But yeah, it's open to anyone who's got an interest or an appetite.
Thank you. The other thought I also had around public-private partnership is beyond Kurima Mari, there are other advisory application, SITCO is the Sydney application, Gender with their own application. The question that I have is, as development players, are we interacting with the private sector and creating awareness, the digital literacy on usage of these tools? I think these are low-hanging fruits that we could tap on. Do we have any? I will take another set of questions.
Yes, nice. Continuing on the theme of sustainability, there must be a reason why you're not trying to get an advertising revenue on the app. What is the reason?
So we experimented with live adverts for the application. The biggest drawback, or the two main concerns. Number one, it meant that you're trying to target users that would have internet access if you're trying to put Google Ads extension. And the huge chunk of the users we have offline users. So it wouldn't be as attractive to potential advertisers to say advertise on KM when they go online. That's when they'll see your advert pop up, that sort of thing. Number one. Number two, when we tried to make adjustments to the layout of the application and include some advertising features, we didn't get the sort of positive response from the potential users. They're saying that they don't understand this, they don't like this. Our concern was that some users were talking about being forced to click on ad extensions and ending up using their limited data. And for us, we felt that we would relegate potential ad use to something that's not a priority. and focus on making sure that the information is delivered in the best way, and users are not confused by anything that they have to click on, that sort of thing. Yeah, exactly. So something that we have been experimenting with, we're trying to look at native advertising. So there's a lot of knocking on doors that's going to be happening next year, particularly to some private sector players that are in this room, embedding some of their adverts in some of the content that we've already developed under specific sections of the application. To give an example, we have a rural finance section that talks about everything from ISOs, that sort of thing. But then it talks about potential service providers that provide services that are specific to finance. We want to beef up the section, but we want a potential advertiser to say, look, as for example, cabs, we're going to pay for this section, and we're going to essentially promote what we have that fits that particular user segment. Like I said, it's not yet fully hashed out, but we are hoping that some revenue is going to come from that and help offset some of the costs that we've already absorbed.
Thank you. I'll take the last round of questions and comments from the room 3. Then I'll go to online. Then I'll pass over to Mike since we're over time. ZMX, I was actually going to give you an opportunity to talk. We have been seeing the developments around the commodity markets. Over to you, Dennis.
All right. Thank you, Rodney. Thank you, Tim. So my comments to what has been discussed is the operations between private sectors and public sector quite different. While the private sector is for profit, so we tend to focus more on where we can get a return on investment. So that comes into the recommendations that I feel saying we need the public-private partnerships. We put the development of projects then complement what the private sector is doing in other areas which we cannot reach. As for ZMX, I think I agree to what Kennedy said, to say in some areas we are not visible, and the reason for that is resource constraints. So we are open to partnerships so we can reach as many clients as possible. And we believe that the solution we are bringing, the commodity strategy, and also help, especially our smallholder farmers, get a better return on their investments and on their projects. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Dennis. I actually saw your advert in the afternoon that you now have coordinators moving on bikes, going around creating awareness. I will look forward to see more commodities on the market and to have more awareness. Any other comment from the room? Mr. Candice.
Yes, for me, Kenneth, as we develop these digital solutions and platforms, and I think you said it that it's moving at a faster rate. And for me, I'm becoming afraid, especially the social platforms. You get a lot of junk that you don't want, you can't believe it. And now I'm saying for the smallholder farmers, what guarantees are we putting in place pressure that what they get is what is real? Even for me, I'm afraid. When I go there, I see a lot of junkie and I'm scared.
Thank you for that comment. I'm not sure if Minister of ICT, you would have a comment on this, because it's one of the things that came out during the key informant with that was Mr. Gotten the name, but he did highlight that in terms of regulation, the government is lagging behind. Are you putting some sort of measures in terms of putting structures for privacy and safety and the quality of information, maybe in collaboration with Ministry of Agriculture? Is there a work around that?
I think our security section is doing something like that. Yes.
Maybe perhaps back to the Market Linkage Association, this was one of the study recommendations to create a community of practice to discuss these things. What quality of information is going to our farmers, to our clients, and regulation in terms of the sector. We are seeing lots of developments. Nigel.
Yeah, just to respond to Mr. Takaenda's comment on what's real and what's not in terms of extension information. I'll share our experience in ZRBF, in LFSP, and partly in ZAGP as well. We promoted WhatsApp as one of the tools in the e-extension basket. And one thing we realized early on, this was probably 2016, 2017, was that WhatsApp is only as good as the people who are acting as the custodians of the particular group that you're using. If there's a way to ensure that information is verified. And for the programs that I have mentioned, it was fairly simple because you'd have a government extension officer who's part of the group, and farmers could then ask that, look, what this farmer, Mr. Moy, has shared, is it true or not about how I'm supposed to grow my watermelons? And then it's now up to the extension officer to do the follow-up homework and share what's fact from fiction. If they can immediately dismiss it, then they start a conversation or whatever. But what's important is that there has to be capacity for the people who are acting as the, the mediators or moderators in a particular group. Number one. Number two, you need to develop rules around what's acceptable as information, and you need to have a lot of open discussion in those particular forums. And in the WhatsApp groups that we're talking about, it started off with a lot of chaos. You can imagine, people always come across different sorts of information, as you put it. But with time, people understood that if something has been drawn from the internet and the link has been shared, that doesn't mean it's the truth. People first have to discuss and say, is this true or not, or whatever. And you find that the conversations have evolved with time. So there's a bit of an education that's still needed. There's going to be a need for some capacity for the people who are always going to be part of that community, who are respected as sort of like thought leaders or points of authority when it comes to what's fact or fiction, when it comes to information. And they too have to be active in the online platforms and channels to really help sift, what's good information from bad information.
Thank you. One last question online, and we'll pass over to Mike. It was from Elizabeth. She was asking, what would you take to scale into other countries? I guess it's Kurima Mari. What support and maintenance in the app is offered, and would there be a cost to it?
Could you please repeat that question? What would you want?
Would you scale Kurima Mari into other countries? And what support and maintenance costs would you need, and what costs you need to expand into other countries?
Okay. So quick answers. Yes, we have scaled in other countries. I mentioned Malawi, I mentioned Uganda. What we provided as technical support was we have developed what's essentially a roadmap for a mobile extension tool in smallholder farming communities. And that talks about everything from creating teams for user-based engagement. But before you do that, actually, it's the right sort of partnerships with the key players on the ground. In our case, it was government. We felt that government extension always needs to take a primary role in what you're developing. So that's what we've done in the other two countries. And then thinking about sustainability before you even start developing the solution. There was the hot question that I mentioned about how come it's not working. In Malawi, they sort of like thought about it first before they developed it. Uganda has also done the same. And they are trying to come up with a revenue model for both applications that's a bit different from what we thought would work. But seeing that they're building from the ground up, they're sort of like incorporating learnings of what's actually viable and what's not. We couldn't do that because this only came 5 years afterwards. So all of that is what we're essentially taking into the different countries that we're trying to scale. And we believe that we've kind of figured it out, at least for 3 markets. So that's why we're now looking at Francophone Africa to say, will it be able to work in the same way?
All right, thank you so much. I'll have to cut the forum at this stage. In the interest of time, we are 20 minutes over time. So for specific questions, we'll direct them to participants. You can send to the Market Linkage Association email, then we'll link you up with the presenters. Thank you so much, Nigel and Kennedy. Then to Michael, over to you. I think as we are still discussing about digital agriculture, we are already talking about applications of AI and blockchain to agriculture. The discussion is started and we are lagging behind already. Thanks so much.
So you guys can just tell you the group itself.
Sure.
So thanks very much. The time I can see with people that have to leave. From the Marketing Association, this is our last forum of the year. We do have an event on 7 December, which is the executive meeting. In January, we'll be shifting focus to smallholder horticulture. We've got a few talks lined up for that. I think Tony, your everything was signed, yeah? Yeah, okay. Oh, great. So I think that's about it. Thanks very much, everyone. And thank you to our and to Ron. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for the picture.